Ladies and gentlemen, life has a way of throwing challenges at us. Moments that make us question everything we thought we knew. We face obstacles that seem insurmountable, struggles that seem endless. But today, I want to remind you of a truth that will carry you through those dark times. A truth that brings comfort and strength. Hold on to the God who holds you. Now, I know there are times when we feel alone, when it seems like the weight of the world is on our shoulders. We may feel like we're losing our grip, like we're about to fall. But in those moments, remember this: God is unchanging. He is a constant force in a world full of change. No matter how your circumstances shift, no matter how uncertain the future may seem, God remains the same. His love, His faithfulness, His promises, these are the things that hold us steady. When everything else around us is shaken, God stands firm, and His arms are always there to catch us when we fall. We serve a sovereign God. His control over all creation is a reminder that He is fully aware of what we're going through. Nothing escapes His sight and nothing surprises Him. God is not distant. He is near. When we face trials, we can trust that they're not random. They are part of a greater plan. And though we may not understand the why in the moment, we can always trust the who. God knows what He's doing, and His plan for us is good. But here's the thing: holding on to God is a choice. It's easy to let go when life gets hard. It's easy to question His presence or doubt His ability to help us. But holding on to God is an act of faith. It's not about how strong we are. It's about how strong He is. When we grip tightly to Him, we are acknowledging that we believe His power is greater than anything we face. We trust that His ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts higher than our thoughts. Faith is simply holding on when everything else tells you to let go. And in that holding on, there's purpose. God doesn't allow us to go through struggles just to break us. No, these trials are the refining process. The very thing that strengthens our faith, shapes our character, and molds us into the people He has called us to be. In those moments of struggle, when we hold on to Him, we become more like Him. We learn to trust Him deeper, to rely on His strength, not our own. Our challenges are not meaningless. They are the catalyst for growth, for greater faith, and for the fulfillment of God's purpose in our lives. As you walk through life, don't forget this: God is faithful. He has never failed. He will never fail, and He will not fail you. His promises are true, and His word is a foundation you can stand on. When you feel weak, He is your strength. When you are tired, He is your rest. When the journey seems too long, He is your guide. His faithfulness is constant, and we can rely on Him through every season of life. One of the most powerful ways to hold on to God is through prayer and praise. Prayer keeps us connected to Him. It's our conversation with our Creator. It's where we pour out our hearts, lay down our burdens, and draw near to Him. Praise shifts our focus from the problem to the problem solver. When we praise, we remind ourselves of God's greatness, His power, and His ability to overcome any obstacle. Prayer and praise are the keys that unlock the strength to hold on. And here's the beautiful part. Holding on to God leads to victory. It's not about avoiding the struggle, but about trusting that God is working through it. Your victory might not look like what you expected, but it will always be greater than you can imagine. In holding on to God, you find peace in the storm, clarity in the chaos, and purpose in the pain. And in the end, God's plan for you will always triumph, because He is the ultimate victor. God's unchanging nature is one of the most comforting and reassuring truths we can hold on to, especially in times of uncertainty. In a world where everything around us is constantly shifting, our circumstances, our emotions, our relationships, it is a relief to know that there is one thing that remains constant: God Himself. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. This means that no matter what we face, no matter how much we change, God's nature is unwavering. His love for us does not waver based on our performance or the situations we find ourselves in. Unlike human relationships, where feelings and loyalty can sometimes change, God's commitment to us is steady. His promises never falter, and His character never shifts. This is not because God is indifferent or distant, but because He's a faithful and reliable source of strength. The foundation of our trust in God is built on the fact that He cannot and will not change. He is dependable in all things. Whether we are walking in peace or struggling through difficulty, when we hold on to the God who holds us, we are holding on to something unshakable. The storms of life may come and the seasons may change, but God's nature remains constant. His truth remains unchanged. His power remains unaltered, and His presence remains with us, even when we feel lost or overwhelmed. In the chaos of life, we can take comfort in the fact that God is not surprised or disturbed by what we face. He has seen it all, and His unwavering character assures us that we are never alone. It is this very unchanging nature of God that gives us hope. We may not have control over the events in our lives, but we can trust in the stability of the one who holds the universe together. In a world of change, He is our constant. When everything else is uncertain, He is the rock we can stand on, the anchor that holds us firm. The God who was faithful to those before us will continue to be faithful to us. And just as He held the world in place from the beginning, He will hold us through every season. To understand God's sovereignty is to recognize that He is the supreme authority over all creation, holding the ultimate power and control over everything in existence. This is not just a theological concept, but a profound truth that speaks to every aspect of our lives. It means that there is nothing in this world, no situation, no circumstance, no challenge that happens outside of God's will or His divine plan. God is never caught off guard. He is never taken by surprise. Everything that happens, whether good or difficult, is within His sovereign control. When we truly grasp God's sovereignty, we begin to see that He is not just the creator, but also the sustainer of all things. The universe, with all its complexities, operates under His direction. Every breath we take, every sunrise we witness, every season that passes, God is at the center of it all, orchestrating His will in ways that often transcend our understanding. His sovereignty assures us that the world is not chaotic or aimless, but that it operates under the wisdom and authority of a perfect creator. This sovereignty brings us comfort in times of uncertainty. When things seem out of control or we feel helpless in our situations, we can rest in the knowledge that God is still in control. He sees the end from the beginning, and nothing is beyond His reach. We may not always understand why things unfold the way they do, but knowing that God is sovereign allows us to trust that He is working everything out for a greater purpose. His purpose. The events we experience, both the joys and the trials, are all part of the grand design He has for us. God's sovereignty invites us to surrender our desire for control and to place our trust fully in Him. It's about letting go of our need to understand every detail and instead trusting that the one who holds the world in his hands knows what he is doing. This doesn't mean we are passive or disengaged, but rather that we acknowledge our dependence on him and choose to align our will with his. The sovereignty of God also highlights his goodness. He rules not out of tyranny, but out of love and wisdom. His sovereignty means that he governs with perfect justice and mercy. His plans are always good, even when they don't align with our limited perspective. As we lean into God's sovereignty, we realize that his ways, although mysterious at times, are always right. In his hands, even the painful moments of life can be used to shape us, grow us, and fulfill his greater purpose. When we come to understand God's sovereignty, we stop trying to control every aspect of our lives and instead start living in the freedom of trusting that he is ultimately in charge. We gain peace, knowing that we serve a God who is not only powerful, but who is also intimately involved in the details of our lives. His sovereignty means we are never abandoned, and no matter what we face, he is with us, guiding us, and working all things together for our good. God's ever-present help is one of the most profound and comforting aspects of his nature. It speaks to the reality that no matter where we are or what we are facing, God is always near, always ready to assist, guide, and sustain us. His presence is not limited by time or space, and he does not withdraw from us in our moments of need. Unlike humans who may be physically distant or emotionally unavailable, God is constantly with us, offering his help and support in every situation. This ever-present help means that we are never alone, even when it feels like the world is closing in around us. This industry of waking up to irrational, going with us through every trial and triumph. There is no place, no circumstance where his help cannot reach us. He is no place, no circumstance. There is no place, no circumstances. There is no reason where his help cannot reach us. Whether we are in the highest mountain peaks or the lowest valleys, his presence is unwavering and unchanging. God's help is not just a passive presence, but an active and powerful intervention. He does not merely stand by and watch. He engages with us, providing the strength we need, the wisdom we seek, and the comfort we long for. In our weakness, his power is made perfect. When we are unsure of our next step, his guidance is clear. When we are overwhelmed by the weight of our burdens, his peace settles over us. This is the beauty of God's ever-present help. It is not just about his proximity, but also about his willingness and ability to act on our behalf. Even in moments when we don't feel him, when we can't sense his presence, we can trust that he is still with us. His nearness is not dependent on our emotions or circumstances. God's promise is that he will never leave us nor forsake us. His help is always available, even if we cannot immediately recognize it. Sometimes his help comes in quiet, subtle ways, through the encouragement of a friend, a moment of clarity in prayer, or a deep peace in the midst of chaos. Other times, his help is more dramatic, intervening in ways that only he can, changing our circumstances or providing a breakthrough when we thought there was no way out. The fact that God is our ever-present help also speaks to the nature of his love. He desires to be with us, to help us, and to care for us in every aspect of our lives. His presence is not conditional upon our perfection or our ability to earn it. He is with us simply because he loves us. This constant companionship means that no matter how challenging life becomes, we can always turn to him and know that he is there, ready and willing to offer his help. There is no fear too great, no problem too small, no mountain too high for God to meet us in. As we walk through life, we are never left to navigate our struggles alone. God's ever-present help is a constant reminder that we are his beloved children, held secure in his care. Even in our darkest moments, when we feel like we are sinking, he is there to lift us up. His presence is the anchor that holds us steady, the source of our strength, and the refuge we can always run to. With God's help, we can face any storm, climb any mountain, and overcome any challenge. Because we do not face them alone. Holding on is more than just a physical act. It's a powerful declaration of faith, a choice that reflects our trust in God's power and his promises. Life often brings us to moments where we feel like letting go is the easier option. In the midst of pain, uncertainty, or discouragement, the temptation to release our grip on hope, on faith, or on God's plan is strong. But holding on in these very moments becomes an act of defiance against the trials we face. It is saying, I will not give up. I will not let go of what God has promised me. When we hold on, we are actively choosing to believe that God's plan for us is still in motion, even if we can't yet see the full picture. Our ability to hold on to God in the toughest of times is a sign of spiritual maturity and growth. It's easy to trust God when everything is going well, when our lives are free from problems and our hearts are light. But true faith is tested in the fires of adversity. Holding on through those times shows God that we are committed, that we are willing to trust him even when we don't have all the answers, and that we believe he is greater than the challenges we face. Holding on is not about relying on our own strength. It's about leaning into God's strength and acknowledging that he is the one who sustains us. In those moments when we feel weak, when we feel like we can't hold on any longer, we are reminded that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. Holding on is not about gritting our teeth and enduring in our own power. It's about surrendering our limitations and trusting that God's grace is sufficient to carry us through. It's knowing that we do not have to navigate life's challenges alone, but that God is holding us in his hands, even when we can't see it. There is a deep significance in holding on through difficult times. It is in the act of holding on that we discover who we really are in Christ. It's when we are pressed and tested that our true strength is revealed, not because of our own abilities, but because of the strength we draw from God. In those moments, we grow in our understanding of God's faithfulness. We begin to see that as we hold on, God is holding on to us, guiding us and protecting us from harm. Holding on is a reminder that God is not just watching us from afar, but is intimately involved in our journey, walking beside us every step of the way. When we hold on, we also align ourselves with God's will for our lives. Often, in times of struggle, the temptation is to abandon what God has called us to do or to give up on the promises he has made. But when we hold on, we keep our eyes fixed on him and his purposes. We refuse to let go of his vision for our future, even when the road is hard. Holding on is an act of obedience. It says, I trust you, Lord, even when I don't understand everything. I trust that you are working all things together for my good. Holding on brings transformation. It changes us. Every time we resist the urge to let go, we are being refined. We become stronger in our faith, deeper in our understanding of God's character, and more resilient in facing future challenges. The struggle is not in vain. It is shaping us, preparing us for greater things ahead. God uses our perseverance to mold us into the people He has designed us to be. When we hold on, we begin to look more like Him, reflecting His patience, His grace, and His endurance. Holding on is an act of victory. It's in the act of holding on that we find our breakthrough. When we don't give up, when we keep moving forward with God by our side, we discover that the very things that tried to break us have no power over us. By holding on, we position ourselves for the victory that God has promised. It may not come in the way we expect or at the time we want, but victory is guaranteed for those who remain faithful and continue to hold on to the God who holds them. Holding on is not passive. It is a powerful, intentional decision to trust God, lean on His strength, and continue to move forward in faith. And in that act, we experience the fullness of God's presence, His peace, and His ultimate victory. Struggles are often seen as obstacles to overcome, as interruptions to the peaceful flow of life. But in reality, struggles have purpose. They are not meaningless or random. They are opportunities for growth, refinement, and alignment with God's greater plan. In every trial, there is a divine purpose at work, one that stretches beyond our immediate understanding. God does not allow us to face challenges simply to break us. God does not allow us to face challenges simply to break us. No, it's so hard. God is not allowed us to face challenges simply to break us. When we go through difficult times, it's easy to focus only on the pain, the frustration, or the uncertainty. We may question why we are facing the struggle or wonder if it will ever end. But what we often fail to see in the moment is that God is working behind the scenes, using our struggles to prepare us for something greater. Trials refine us, just as a refiner's fire purifies gold. In the heat of our difficulties, impurities are burned away, and what remains is something stronger, more valuable. The person we become after enduring a struggle is often far more capable of fulfilling God's purpose in our lives than we were before. In the midst of our struggles, we often discover new depths of our character and our faith. We learn what it means to depend on God in ways we never imagined. It is easy to claim faith when life is smooth and predictable, but true faith is birthed in the fire of adversity. As we lean on God during our struggles, we come to understand His faithfulness in ways that are impossible to experience in times of peace. We find that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness, that His grace is sufficient for every need, and that His peace surpasses all understanding. It is through struggle that we become more intimately acquainted with His presence, and our trust in Him deepens. Struggles also reveal to us areas where we need to grow. They expose weaknesses in our character, flaws in our thinking, and places where we may have been relying on our own strength rather than trusting in God. These moments of discomfort force us to confront parts of ourselves that we may have ignored or avoided. But this is not something to fear, it is a gift. God uses the struggle to shine a light on areas where He desires to do a work in us. He wants us to become more like Him. And sometimes the only way to bring about that transformation is through the trials we face. Struggles strengthen our resilience. Each time we overcome a challenge, we become more capable of facing the next one. What may seem like an insurmountable obstacle at first eventually becomes something we can navigate with God's help. The more we endure, the more we develop perseverance, which in turn builds our character. Through struggle, we learn that we are not defined by our circumstances, but by how we respond to them. And the more we respond with faith and trust in God, the more we grow in our ability to stand firm no matter what comes our way. The purpose in the struggle also extends beyond ourselves. God often uses our hardships to prepare us to help others. The pain we experience can become a powerful testimony of God's goodness, His grace, and His ability to bring us through even the darkest moments. As we walk through our own struggles, we gain the wisdom and empathy necessary to encourage and support others who are facing similar battles. Our struggles equip us to minister to others in a way that nothing else can. We become living testimonies of God's redemptive power, able to point others to the hope that is found in Him. It is in the struggle that we also learn to let go of our need for control. Struggles often remind us that we are not in charge, that we cannot fix everything on our own. This realization is humbling, but it also brings us to a place of surrender. In surrendering our will to God, we allow Him to take control and work in ways that are far greater than we could ever plan. The struggle teaches us to trust in His timing and His wisdom, to rest in the knowledge that He is working all things together for our good, even when we cannot see the full picture. The purpose in the struggle is to align us with God's will and His ultimate plan for our lives. The process may not be easy or quick, but it is always purposeful. God does not waste our pain. He uses it to fulfill His purpose in us and through us. Our struggles are not the end of the story. They are the beginning of something deeper, something greater. When we look at our struggles through the lens of faith, we can see that they are stepping stones, not roadblocks. They are the means by which God refines us, strengthens us, and prepares us to step into the fullness of His purpose for our lives. God's faithfulness in the journey is a truth that provides deep comfort and strength, especially when the path ahead seems uncertain or difficult. Life's journey is filled with twists and turns, moments of joy and seasons of hardship. But through it all, God's faithfulness remains constant. From the very beginning, He has shown His commitment to His people, and His faithfulness does not waver based on our circumstances or feelings. God walks with us every step of the way, offering guidance, provision, and love in ways we may not always see, but can always trust. At times, the journey can feel long and the destination distant, but even in those moments of waiting or struggle, God's faithfulness is evident. He is the one who sustains us in our weariness, lifting us when we feel like we can't take another step. His faithfulness is not just about the end result. It is about His continual presence with us throughout every stage of the journey. Whether we're climbing a mountain, trudging through a valley, or standing still in a moment of uncertainty, God is with us. He does not abandon us when the road gets tough. Rather, he meets us in the midst of our journey, offering the strength we need to keep going. There are times when we may question God's faithfulness, particularly when we encounter difficulties that seem overwhelming or when the path is unclear. Yet it is in those very moments that God's faithfulness becomes most apparent. He doesn't promise that we will never face challenges, but he does promise that he will be with us through them. His faithfulness is seen not in the absence of hardship, but in his presence in the midst of it. He does not leave us to navigate the trials of life on our own. He walks beside us, offering his help and support every step of the way. God's faithfulness is also revealed in the way he provides for us along the journey. Often we find that he meets our needs in unexpected ways, showing up just when we need him most. It might not always look the way we expect or happen when we want, but God is always faithful to provide what is necessary for the journey. This might be physical provision, emotional strength, or spiritual guidance. In moments when we feel like we are lacking or unprepared, God provides exactly what we need to move forward. This provision is a reflection of his love for us and his desire to see us succeed and fulfill his purpose in our lives. As we walk with God, we also come to realize that his faithfulness is not just about meeting our needs, but about fulfilling his promises. God's promises are sure and steadfast, and as we journey with him, we see those promises unfold in our lives. These promises give us hope, even in the midst of uncertainty, and they anchor us when the storms of life threaten to overwhelm us. God is faithful to his word, and he will bring to pass what he has promised. Sometimes his timing is different from ours, but his faithfulness remains unshaken. He will complete the work he has started in us. And we can trust that his plan is unfolding exactly as it should. Through the highs and lows of the journey, God's faithfulness is a constant reminder that we are not alone. He is not a distant observer watching from afar. He is intimately involved in our lives, guiding us, protecting us, and loving us with an everlasting love. His faithfulness gives us the courage to keep moving forward, even when we don't have all the answers, because we know that he is with us. When we feel unsure or insecure about the path ahead, we can take comfort in the fact that God's faithfulness is not contingent on our ability to see the whole picture. He knows the way, and he is guiding us step by step toward his purpose for our lives. God's faithfulness in the journey invites us to be faithful in return. Just as he is unwavering in his commitment to us, he calls us to remain faithful to him, trusting in his timing and his plan, even when it doesn't make sense. Our faithfulness to God is a response to his faithfulness to us. As we reflect on how he has been faithful in the past, we find the strength to trust him for the future. Our journey becomes a partnership with God, where we trust him to lead and guide, and he trusts us to walk in faith. In the end, God's faithfulness is not just a concept. It is something we experience every day on our journey. Whether in moments of peace or times of trial, we can rest in the assurance that God will never leave us, that he will always provide for us, and that he will fulfill every promise he has made. As we continue on this journey of life, we are never walking alone. God's faithfulness is our constant companion, and his love is the thread that weaves through every step of our lives. We can trust that the journey we are on is leading us exactly where we need to go, and that every step, every struggle, and every victory is part of the beautiful unfolding of God's faithful plan. The power of prayer and praise is immeasurable, for they serve as two of the most profound tools we have in our relationship with God. Prayer is our direct line to the Creator, the means by which we communicate our hearts, our desires, our struggles, and our thanks. It is through prayer that we find comfort, strength, and direction. Prayer is not just about asking for what we need, but about aligning our hearts with God's will, submitting ourselves to His purpose, and inviting His presence into every area of our lives. It's a powerful act of humility and trust, acknowledging that we cannot navigate life on our own, but that God is the source of all wisdom, strength, and provision. In times of trial, prayer becomes our refuge, a place of solace where we can pour out our hearts without fear of rejection or judgment. It's in these moments that we find peace, knowing that we are heard by the Creator of the universe. When words fail us, prayer allows us to express what our hearts cannot articulate. And in doing so, we invite God's peace that surpasses understanding to fill our spirits. Through prayer, we can release our burdens, knowing that God is faithful to carry them for us. And as we pray, we're reminded of His sovereignty and His faithfulness, which strengthens our trust in His plan, even when we don't fully understand it. Praise, on the other hand, is an outward expression of the gratitude and worship that arise from the depths of our hearts. It is acknowledging the greatness of God, His power, His goodness, and His faithfulness. Praise is a celebration of who God is, independent of our circumstances. It's easy to praise God when things are going well, when life is peaceful and smooth. But the true power of praise emerges when we choose to worship God in the midst of difficulty, uncertainty, and pain. In these moments, praise becomes an act of defiance against discouragement and despair. It's saying, despite what I am facing, I will bless the Lord, for He is good, He is faithful, and He is worthy of my praise. The combination of prayer and praise is a dynamic force in the believer's life. Prayer aligns us with God's heart, while praise lifts our eyes to His greatness. Prayer brings our requests before Him, while praise reminds us of His ability to answer and His power to transform situations. Together, they shift our perspective from our problems to the one who is greater than them. In moments of praise, we are reminded that our struggles are temporary, but God's sovereignty is eternal. As we praise, we are declaring that God is bigger than any challenge we face. And in doing so, we tap into His power to bring about change. There is also power in corporate prayer and praise. When we gather together with others to pray and praise, we create an atmosphere where God's presence can move in powerful ways. The unity of believers, lifting their voices in prayer and praise, invites God's Spirit to manifest in a unique and powerful way. There is something about collective worship that magnifies God's power, drawing us closer to each other and to Him. In these moments, we are reminded that we are not alone in our struggles, and that together we are stronger as we join our voices in worship. Prayer and praise are also essential in the process of spiritual warfare. When we face attacks from the enemy, whether in the form of fear, doubt, or discouragement, prayer and praise become powerful weapons that dismantle the enemy's lies. Prayer connects us to God's truth, reminding us of His promises and His victory over the enemy. Praise, in turn, disarms the enemy by focusing our hearts on God's greatness and goodness. When we choose to praise in the midst of warfare, we declare that God is in control, and we refuse to allow fear or doubt to dictate our actions. Prayer and praise become the very weapons that push back the darkness and usher in the light of God's presence. When we make prayer and praise a daily part of our lives, we create an atmosphere in which God can work freely. Our hearts become more attuned to his voice, more sensitive to his leading, and more open to his will. Prayer invites God into our lives, and praise exalts him, creating a space for him to move, speak, and act. Through consistent prayer and praise, we deepen our relationship with God, and we begin to experience his presence in ways we never thought possible. The power of prayer and praise is not just about changing our circumstances, but about transforming us. As we pray and praise, we are being shaped and molded into the image of Christ. Our faith grows, our trust in God deepens, and our hearts become more aligned with his will. Prayer and praise shift our focus from what we can control to the one who holds everything in his hands. In this exchange, we experience the peace, joy, and strength that come from being in the presence of the Almighty. And we are empowered to face whatever comes our way. Victory in holding on is a powerful reality that often unfolds in ways we don't initially recognize. Holding on, especially during times of adversity, is not a passive act, but an intentional decision to persevere, to trust, and to remain steadfast despite the challenges we face. When everything within us is telling us to let go, to give up, or to walk away from the promises we know God has made, holding on becomes an act of faith. It's saying, I trust you, Lord, even when I cannot see the way ahead. I will hold on to what you have said because I know you are faithful. The victory in holding on doesn't necessarily come in the way we expect. It may not look like an immediate solution or a sudden breakthrough. Often it comes in the form of spiritual strength, growth, and character development. Every moment we hold on, even when it feels like we are hanging by a thread, is a moment where God is building something in us. Holding on through difficulty teaches us perseverance, and perseverance refines our faith. As we endure, we grow in our ability to trust God more deeply, to depend on him more fully, and to rely on his strength rather than our own. In those moments of holding on, we may not be able to see it, but God is at work in ways that will reveal themselves in time. Victory in holding on is also found in the transformation that takes place in us as we endure trials. When we hold on to God's promises in the midst of hardship, we allow God to shape us, to strengthen our resolve, and to purify our hearts. Holding on requires us to let go of our need for control and to trust in God's timing and plan. It often requires a surrender of our own understanding of how things should be and a submission to the reality that God's ways are higher than ours. It's through this process of surrender that we find peace, knowing that the victory isn't just in the outcome, but in how God is transforming us on the journey. There is also a deep, quiet victory that comes from holding on in faith. It is not always flashy or dramatic, but it is significant. Every time we resist the temptation to give up, we are building resilience. We are learning to stand firm, even when the storm rages around us. The victory isn't always seen in the circumstances changing immediately. Sometimes it is seen in the quiet confidence that grows within us, in the deep-rooted peace that settles in our hearts, and in the unwavering belief that God is who he says he is. That confidence in God's unchanging nature and his faithfulness to his promises is victory in itself. Another aspect of the victory in holding on is the reward of witnessing God's faithfulness. When we choose to hold on to God and his promises, even when the way seems unclear, we create space for God to show himself strong. God does not leave us in the struggle without a plan or without purpose. When we hold on, we allow God to work on our behalf. We may not see the full picture right away, but we can trust that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating things in ways that will eventually bring us to a place of victory. Holding on positions us to receive the blessings that God has in store for us, as it aligns our hearts with His will and builds our faith in His perfect timing. Victory in holding on also reveals the power of community. Sometimes the strength to hold on comes from others who are walking alongside us. We were not meant to face struggles alone. And when we hold on together in faith, we create an atmosphere of support, encouragement, and shared strength. The Bible tells us that when one person is weak, another can lift them up. Holding on becomes a communal effort, where the victories of each individual contribute to the victory of the group. In this we find strength, not only in our own perseverance, but in the collective perseverance of the body of Christ. The victory in holding on, however, is the assurance that we are never holding on in vain. Every moment of endurance, every second of unwavering faith is known by God. He sees our struggle, He hears our prayers, and He walks with us through every trial. The victory of holding on is not just a victory we achieve on our own, but one that is granted by God. It is a victory rooted in His faithfulness, His provision, and His grace. As we hold on, we are holding on to the one who holds us, who carries us, and who guarantees the ultimate victory over every trial and challenge. Holding on to God through the storms of life is not just an act of survival. It is an act of faith that brings us closer to His heart and positions us to see the glory of His faithfulness revealed in our lives. When we hold on, we participate in a divine process that leads us toward the victory God has already secured for us. This victory might look different than we initially expected, but it is always worth the perseverance. Every moment of holding on brings us closer to the fulfillment of God's promises. So, even when the journey is long and the challenges feel overwhelming, we can be confident that victory is found in the faithfulness of God, who is always with us and always working for our good. Holding on is not just about enduring a moment of difficulty. It is about choosing to trust in the unshakable faithfulness of God, no matter the circumstances. The victory found in holding on is not always instant, but it is always profound. It is found in the transformation of our hearts, the deepening of our faith, and the discovery of God's unwavering presence in our lives. When we hold on, we declare that we believe in God's promises and His ability to bring us through every storm. We acknowledge that the journey, though difficult, is leading us to a place of victory, a victory that is not defined by the absence of struggle, but by the presence of God in our lives. So no matter where you find yourself today, remember that victory is not just in the destination, but in the perseverance, faith, and trust that you carry along the way. Hold on, because the God who holds you is faithful, and He will never let you go. Your victory is secure, not because of your strength, but because of His. Keep holding on. Your breakthrough is just ahead.